The superhero genre is the biggest thing around these days, and with the likes of Joker and The Boys turning heads at the moment, it's clear that there's still plenty to be mined and tons of fresh ideas being applied to this formula. However, at the top, you've got the ever-long battle between Marvel and DC, who are slugging away at each other for box office dominance. Now, as it stands, and this isn't just me being a fanboy, Marvel, with the might of Disney behind them, does seem to be standing tall at the moment, but that's not to say the DCEU is on the down and out. It's just been a rockier road for them. And it's only in hindsight that you can actually look back at the choices that have been made along the way and see just how different things could have been if certain choices had been made. So today, let's look at what might have been and some interesting points that you might not have been aware of. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 mind-blowing facts that you didn't know about the DCEU. Number 10. Ben Affleck was in the running to direct Man of Steel. After Superman Returns disappointed Warner Brothers, the studio decided to move forward with a Superman reboot rather than a continuation. This eventually led to Zack Snyder being hired for Man of Steel in October 2010. But before then, several other directors were considered for the job, including the future Batman, Ben Affleck. It was producer Christopher Nolan who put together a short list of candidates for the studio to peruse, which included the late Tony Scott, Jonathan Liebesman, Duncan Jones, Darren Aronofsky, and even the director of the upcoming Batman movie, Matt Reeves. Who knows how it might have affected the film if Affleck were cast, but it would have definitely meant that he wouldn't have been able to be cast as Batman, which was arguably one of the franchise's biggest success stories. Number 9. Wonder Woman could have been an action comedy from the director of Bridesmaids. After the successful launch of Man of Steel, chatter about solo films based on other DC characters began to heat up, and as you might imagine when trying to introduce the whole squad later down the line, Wonder Woman was one of those names being thrown around. Now, while nothing was concrete at the time, Warner Brothers were pitched an idea by director Paul Feig, and the idea itself sounded, well, quite unusual, at least when compared to the Wonder Woman movie that we did get. Now, Feig described his vision to IGN back in 2013 and even mentioned that Batman and Superman would have been involved. The film would have involved a Wonder Woman who keeps hitting the glass ceiling of the superhero world. Conceived as a lighter action comedy, this Princess Diana has to contend with male heroes like Batman and Superman who are perhaps not as forward-thinking regarding their female counterpart as they should be. The director also added that the film would have been similar in tone to the Iron Man movies, which actually makes sense considering his comedy background, but obviously this film never came to pass. Instead, he went on to make Ghostbusters 2016 and, well, yeah. Number 8. World of Warcraft almost lost Henry Cavill the Superman role. As anyone who plays video games knows, pausing is something of an impossible feat when playing online, and it was this inability to stop the fun that almost cost Henry Cavill the role as Superman. Cavill had reached the final stage of the audition process and was essentially just waiting to pick up the phone and hear a yes or a no. Being a massive fan of World of Warcraft, he decided to keep himself occupied and hopped online for a few hours. But while he was doing this, the phone rang. It was the Man of Steel's director, Zack Snyder, and he had some good news to share with the actor, but since you can't pause online games like World of Warcraft, Cavill actually missed the call. Whoops. Fortunately, everything obviously ended neatly when the actor called Snyder back and accepted the part. Number 7. Gal Gadot's stomach was a special effect during some Wonder Woman scenes. Reshoots are a normal part of the filmmaking process, at least for major blockbusters. With so much money being spent, it makes sense to book in a few extra weeks to add a bit more polish to the movie, and Wonder Woman was no exception. The only problem with reshoots is that they usually take place months after principal photography has been completed, meaning that the actors can sometimes look wildly different from when they shot the bulk of their scenes. Wonder Woman faced a similar problem as when it came to some final touch-up scenes, Gal Gadot was 5 months pregnant, and it's not like the Amazonian could just suddenly sprout a baby bump. And so the VFX department came to the rescue. The team cut out a triangle from the front of her suit and replaced it with a bright green cloth, which they could then key out in post-production. This allowed them to make her stomach flat, perfectly in line with how it looked during the main shooting period. Number 6. Christopher Nolan didn't want Superman to kill Zod. Superman's decision to kill Zod was a big point of contention within fan circles after Man of Steel released. However, as it turns out, it wasn't just moviegoers who were unsure about this decision. In the original draft of the script, Superman didn't brutally snap Zod's neck. Instead, the villain was sent to the Phantom Zone. However, the director Zack Snyder felt that Superman should kill Zod instead, as this would give a reason behind his reluctance to murder his enemies, much in the same way that Batman's dislike of guns stems from the fact that his parents were killed by one. But not everyone was on board with Snyder's vision, and the director actually faced some pushback from one of his producers, Christopher Nolan. Reportedly, Nolan strongly disagreed with the whole neck-snapping murder idea, apparently telling Snyder, "There's no way that you can do this." However, DC Comics gave Snyder the thumbs up, and the rest is history. Number 5. The original big-screen Superman cameos in Man of Steel. Like every other superhero series, the DCEU is stuffed full of Easter eggs and references for fans to pick up on, and Man of Steel had its own fair share as well. Aside from the LexCorp and Wayne Enterprises nods, one of the most interesting is a neat little cameo that most people probably missed, and it's a reference that ties all the way back to the original Superman film from 1978. That movie begins with the origin story that we all know and love, and in this film, a young Kal was played by Aaron Smolinski, who actually returned to the Superman franchise in Man of Steel for a quick cameo. Smolinski, who was almost 40 at the time, played the role of communications officer and can be seen standing next to Dr. Emil Hamilton during the scene where Zod's forces arrive on Earth. Number 4. The production of Suicide Squad had an on-set therapist for the actors. While making Suicide Squad, director David Ayer aimed for grittiness and realism. He wanted his actors to lose themselves in their roles, so even if they were playing an unhinged killer, he wanted them to become that as much as possible. Then, he clearly went back on his idea because gritty and real are two words that would least describe the final output. However, to stop things from ever getting too emotionally raw, the director hired some on-screen mental health support staff to speak to the cast and crew. In an interview with E! News, Adam Beach, who played Slipknot,
"The man can climb anything,"
spoke about his on-set experience, mentioning that the therapist was always there to make sure the actors didn't fall off the wagon. Makes you think, doesn't it, about what the therapist would have thought about Jared Leto's used condom sending tactics. Number 3. Dwayne Johnson is one of the franchise's longest-serving actors despite never appearing on screen. This one is just weird because as of this time of recording, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is still on contract with DC to play Black Adam, likely in multiple movies, but has never made a single on-screen appearance despite being cast back in 2014. That's 5 years of Johnson playing a character who he's not actually played yet. Interestingly, the time frame actually makes him one of the DCEU's longest-serving actors, up there with Jason Momoa, Margot Robbie, and Ezra Miller. Fortunately, a Black Adam film is currently in the works and recently took a big step forward when it hired the director who worked on The Shallows. Number 2. Christian Bale was considered for a role in Batman vs Superman. Given the immense popularity and success of the Dark Knight trilogy, it was always going to be a tough job for the next on-screen version of Batman to win the hearts of fans. So it was understandable, but also strange at the same time, that Zack Snyder once revealed that he thought about casting Bale in Batman v Superman as well. Speaking to Film Inc. in 2016, the director said that the idea of getting Bale to join the film was briefly discussed. Snyder went on to mention that he received some pressure from Warner Brothers to cast people from the Nolan films, which does lend more credence to the rumor that Bale originally was going to return as Batman. And number 1, Batman v Superman almost featured Joker and the Riddler. One of the biggest problems with Batman vs Superman is that it's distractingly overstuffed. That's not to say that movies can't have a lot of subplots and characters, but in this case, they were just meshed together in a way that wasn't seamless or really that entertaining. We had Lois Lane's investigation of the bullets, Lex's scheming, Superman's existential struggle, Wonder Woman's introduction, Justice League's setup, and the actual fight itself. That is, a lot. That's much like when your mum says that she can fit another banana in the dirt track when there's already a bloody palm tree in there, and was just too much for people to chew on. However, at one point, there was going to be even more. And also, that's my one per list. Specifically, Zack Snyder and his screenwriter came close to adding Joker and the Riddler into the story. Snyder stated that the iconic villains were once in the mix, but were ultimately cut so that the film had more of a focus on Batman and Superman. Had Snyder got his hands on the Joker first, we could have seen something a lot different from the Jared Leto version that we got later on, for better or for worse. As for the Riddler, he's rumoured to appear in Batman 2021, but other than that, hasn't been seen since Jim Carrey's wacky turn in Batman Forever. And there we go, those were 10 mind-blowing facts that you didn't know about the DCEU. Let me know what you thought about it down in the comments section below, and I hope that you enjoyed that, my friends. After all, this list is just meant to be a silly bit of entertainment for you, and I hope that it's enriched your lives in some tiny way. Speaking of that, I hope that you go out and have a great day, whatever you're getting up to, my friend, because you deserve love, happiness, and success. We all do as humans, but you right now, today, go out there and bloody smash it. I believe in you. You should believe in yourself too. And if you want to sling me a follow, you can do so at RetroJ with a 0 over on Twitter. As always, you have been awesome. Never forget that, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.